Hi everybody, Rad Mom here. Welcome back to the channel, where this week we are addressing the burning question in the thoughts and on the lips of inquiring minds everywhere. Was Kurt Cobain trans?
Bet you didn't know that Kurt Cobain was probably trans.
Our guest today on the subject of Kurt Cobain's transness is somebody calling himself Lily Tino.
I use she, her pronouns. I'm not sir. Yeah, like it's like a knife in the heart. I did specifically ask ahead of time not to be called sir. Yeah, I'm just gonna go.
Who is actually a guy from Atlanta who moved to San Francisco to break his drug habit because he was smoking way too much weed and addicted to his benzo prescription. You know, and that stopped him from seeing who he really was. But when he got out to the coast, and got clean, then he discovered he had truly been Lily inside the whole time. My daughter actually suggested this one to me, so of course I had to do it. It is even shorter and sweeter than, the last couple of weeks, but it gives me the opportunity to address something that I've never really addressed on the channel before, which is transing the dead. I'm so happy and relieved that this mostly offends people. Like, you might as well convert somebody to Mormonism after they're dead. Which they also do, apparently. Which is a fun little comparison, right? But without further ado, let's investigate. Was Kurt Cobain really trans?
Bet you didn't know that Kurt Cobain was probably trans. Here's why. First off, Kurt wore a lot of women's clothing.
If wearing women's clothing makes you trans, then I guess drag queens have completely lost the thread. But I thought it wasn't about stereotypes. That's all we're going to hear here, though, of course.
And when asked about this, they replied that they wore dresses all the time because they felt comfortable and free.
I asked an ex-friend of mine about this, and his comment was that they were just doing everything that was counter, to the mainstream culture, which a dude in a dress would have been counter to the mainstream culture at the time. It was part of the whole grunge thing, and like rock music has a long and storied history with gender bending, right? Like, it was par for the course in that field. Like, literally, he's just doing his job. And this is the other reason that I decided to go ahead and do this, is because rock and roll was like my first love, and in my earliest days, I was a musician and a songwriter and an audio engineer. This guy kind of came and wandered into my wheelhouse. I really like to wait for them to come to me.
Just look at Kurt in these pictures. They look so happy. And in an interview about their childhood...
So, but why are you calling him they? Like, legit question. This is implying that Kurt Cobain was a trans woman. Identified with femininity, loved dresses and felt free in them, etc. Wanted to be with the girls, da-da-da-da. Right? What he is saying, what he is arguing, what Lily is arguing, is that Kurt Cobain was a trans woman. So why on earth are you misgendering this poor dead person by calling her they, Lily? That's just adding insult to injury. I don't understand this.
Kurt said that they mostly hung out around girls, and that at one point they thought they might be gay.
You want to talk about your identity being performative? Kurt Cobain was not gay because he has a daughter. But I do think that a lot of these so-called trans people are actually gay. Because apparently internalized homophobia is a real problem.
Many trans people who don't have the vocabulary yet to express their gender identity will describe what they're feeling as being gay.
Maybe they are. Why won't you listen to trans people there, Lily?
Kurt is also quoted as saying that they identify more with the feminine than with the masculine.
Are we talking about gender? As if it is completely unconnected to reproductive sex role? Because it isn't. Or again, we wouldn't be having this argument. Like, wearing a dress wouldn't fucking mean anything in regards to the fact that he was a boy. If gender and sex weren't intimately connected, then that wouldn't mean anything. But so now we're talking about gender associated more with the feminine Again, that might just have been him being a subversive jerk. I didn't know Kurt Cobain, but he was a rock star, okay? And he had just as much machismo as every other guy with greasy hair and a guitar. I have never seen any reason to doubt that.
This is clear proof that Kurt did not identify with the gender they were assigned at birth.
That doesn't mean he didn't want to be a man. Does it? Or does it? Lily, again, the logic is just not there. To say nothing of how offensive it is to try and assign an identity to someone who is deceased.
And the most convincing evidence that Kurt was trans was in an early version of Nirvana's All Apologies lyrics, where Kurt wrote, "Let me grow some."
Are breasts gender? Or are they reproductive sex? Or do they somehow count as both? I don't know. And I don't think he knows either, because I don't think he gave it the slightest thought. But why is this the best evidence? Some deleted line from a song? Why is that the best evidence? My husband suggested that maybe it was because it was the most obscure evidence and most people would not be familiar with it. Maybe. It's called being edgy. It's called being subversive. I would venture to say one thing about Kurt Cobain without ever having met him. He was one hell of an edgelord.
That is clear-cut gender dysphoria.
Why is that lyric clear-cut gender dysphoria? Let me grow breasts. That being a song lyric, perhaps he was speaking metaphorically in some way. Perhaps he was taking poetic license with the concept of breasts. Again, are they sex? Are they gender? Are they symbolic? Perhaps.
And of course, Kurt will never be able to tell us themselves.
No, you're right. He won't. But he lived to be 27 years old and never mentioned a word about any of this as far as I've ever heard to anybody. Like, newsflash, trans people existed back then. Remember? Right? Like, trans people have existed forever, right? So what are you implying? That, like, he somehow didn't have access to this, modern level of understanding and kindness? There were transsexual people in the 90s. Like, Janice Raymond famously wrote her screed against it in the 1970s. I thought Stonewall was y'all's to follow the Berlin Wall or whatever, and now you guys were free. That was in the 60s. Like, I'm so confused. Why wouldn't he just come out? He's already standing up there in a dress. Why wouldn't he just come out? What's the missing piece here? I'm not sold on this being a reason to take the steps that he did.
But the evidence makes it pretty obvious they were trans.
No, we're playing a game of connect the dots, which is a fun game, but I'm not seeing the picture that you're trying to make. I think this is an illusion that you are seeing. Because to you, a man in a dress must secretly want to be a girl. I think you're projecting, my man.
That might be why Kurt's no longer with us.
Oh, we knew that was coming, right? I alluded to it a moment ago. You're seriously going to imply that this guy, who his lifestyle was incredibly self-destructive, he was addicted to many heavy drugs, and was married to a crazy person. I'm just wondering if maybe any of that had anything to do with it. Instead of this thing that, as far as anyone knows, you have just spun out of nothing.
Maybe Kurt knew that we weren't ready.
And how did he know that? Such people existed. The early 90s were not so damn long ago. You don't remember them? Maybe you're a little younger than I am. I do remember the early 90s. I was a kid. There were all kinds of strange people running around. Kurt Cobain was one of them. He was famous for it. I just cannot fathom. Oh my God. And like, you literally have Marilyn Manson a couple of years later running around wearing fake tits. Fake rubber tits in a music video. Is he trans too? I can't wait to hear about that one. Oh wait, he's not dead. So it might be a little while before we hear about how Marilyn Manson, who went by a woman's name, was secretly trans the whole time. We could play this game with various popular singers, I bet. Because a lot of them do that gender bendy thing. It's part of the shock thing that they do, and has been since Elvis grew his hair long, as far as I know. Anyone who's taken a pop music history class could tell you that. Obviously, you know, Lily has not taken that class. When you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Or in this case, a trans woman. Man, please get another hobby, okay? You know, maybe makeup. There is some amazing stuff out there that's not your lip color. So we're just having some fun this week, really, because this is so absurd. You laugh or you cry with this kind of stuff, and I decided to laugh at him tonight. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you at the top of the hour for the live stream where we can poke fun at him some more. And next week on Wednesday, we have been snowed in for 2 weeks. So I promise something a little more in-depth next week. Something a little more my regular flavor next week, I promise. Because I'm finally going to have the time. So yeah, I'll see you then. Have a good one. Bye.